And on the XAU USD, we have been quite profitable since the beginning of the week. And thanks to our patience, because if not for the patience, we might have missed that move. As we saw, though we saw this bearish pressure coming in at the beginning of the week. So we agreed here that we want to wait for price action to come back into our buy zone, which also lines up with the neckline of the reversal pattern that we were able to identify within the demand zone here during the early days of this week. So price came exactly within that neckline area here around the 1640 area, and we saw buying pressure on lower time frame, and we took advantage of that move to the upside. So at this point in time, we are running with about how many pips in profit at this point? We are running with about over 1,800 pips in profit right now. And as at yesterday, where were we as at yesterday? So we were around here yesterday, and I told you to join a retest of this $1,660.50 level. And the reason why we joined that momentum was because of this breakout of the $1,660.50 level. And we saw the retest of that structure here yesterday, and we actually joined that rally to the upside. So right now, price has come back into that entry zone at this point. So I'm not sure how this is going to go. Are we going to be having a situation where price takes us out of this trade that we had here? If price takes us out of this trade, it's okay. And uh, well, we have already moved our stop loss anyway on this one. I think somewhere below the $1,650 level is where our stop loss is here. And if price takes us out, it's okay. We wait for structure to give us another second chance to join the rally to the upside. Now, in addition to the $1,660.50 level is this bullish trend line. Look at what happened here since last week. We saw how we were able to find higher lows, and as a result of that, we were able to identify those bullish trend line. And with that bullish trend line, we can see that price is right back around that level. So we have two scenarios we want to be looking out for at this point. Are we going to be having a situation where we start seeing buying pressure from this area to incite a trend continuation to the upside? Or are we going to be having a situation where price breaks down that trend line to incite a counter trend, probably back into the buy zone here before we start seeing another wave of bullish momentum? So we don't know how this is going to go out in the next couple of hours. So we need to be very mindful. We need to watch out for how price action is going to relate with the structure at around the $1,660 level, which also lines up with that bullish trend line that has been guiding price action since the beginning of the last week trading session. So before we go into the details of how we want to plan this trade for today, let's scale up to the daily time frame. Let's see what's happening from an holistic perspective, and let's see if the structure on the higher time frame still supports a bullish momentum, or we could be having a situation where price might be going to the downside. So scaling up into the daily time frame, well, like I showed you yesterday, we are on a bearish momentum since the beginning of the year. And as a result of that, we were able to connect the series of higher lows here to give us that resultant bearish trend line. So this is what we have here on the daily time frame. So it's obvious that price action has been on a bearish momentum. And to further confirm that the bearish momentum here is strong is the key level at the $1,680 mark. Now look at what happened here in the month of July. Though we had buying pressure here, we had buying pressure during the early days of the month of September. And what we saw during the course of September was that price traded right below the $1,680 level to emphasize the strength of the sellers. Though we had a breakout here during the early days of the month. We can see immediately price came back into the bearish trend line. We saw rejection of the trend line one more time, and we saw price broke down the key level at the $1,680 level, and since then price has been trading right below that structure. So this more or less confirms that the sellers are very strong in the market. But the reason why we took advantage of the buy momentum is simply because of how the $1,625 level has been rejecting all sell pressure in this market. So we can see how as soon as price comes within this level, we saw buying pressure. The same thing happened during the course of last week trading session. We saw selling pressure from that area, and that is what incited that bullish move we took advantage of at the beginning of this week. So what we notice right now is this. Look at what happened in the last 24 hours. Remember, this is the bearish trend line we identified on the daily time frame. Remember, and we can see multiple rejection of that trend line at this point. So what does this tell us? It tells us that there is tendencies of selling pressure around this level. As we can see, sellers continue to reject all buying attempts to push price right above that structure. So what we want to be looking forward to during the New York session is to understand what is really going on in the market around here. Are we going to be having a breakout of the structure to signal a trend continuation to the upside? Or are we going to be having a situation where reversal pattern around this area is going to likely send price crashing to the downside one more time? So in order to have a better perspective into what is really going on here, it's appropriate that we scale down to a much lower time frame. But don't let us forget that price is been rejecting that bearish trend line we identified on the daily time frame. So if we scale down to, let's say, the 2 hours time frame, let's go back to the 2 hours time frame, and we see the multiple rejection of this bearish trend line. What does this tell us? It tells us that depth sellers are very strong at this point. And at the beginning of the week, we saw sharp rejection of the $1,670 level. And again, during the course of yesterday's trading session, we saw another rejection of the $1,670 level by the sellers. So for me at this one, we cannot ignore the possibility of a bearish momentum coming in from this point. So now the $1,660 50 cent level is now becoming a significant level to watch out for during the New York session today. So we can see how price action is lining up right with the key level here at the $1,660 level, and also the bullish trend line we identified that has been holding price action since last week. So right now, if we are going to be looking forward to setting opportunities here, what we want to see is a breakdown of that bullish trend line. Breakdown of both the bullish trend line and the key level at the $1,660 level. Remember, we are not getting too excited at the sight of such a signal. We want to be patient enough to wait for price action to give us further confirmation in the form of a retest of either the bullish trend line or the key level at the $1,660 50 cent level, after which we look out for selling pressure on lower time frame to join the decline to the downside. So that is the first scenario we are looking forward to at this point. So we want to see a breakdown of that structure, retest of the $1,660 50 cent level, look out for selling pressure here on lower time frame, and then we could be thinking of selling the XAU USD with a take profit target sitting right within the demand zone we identified on the daily time frame, which falls around the $1,630 level and the $1,620 area. And if price continue to go to the downside like that, and price tests the $1,640 level, please, it's time to move your stop loss to lock in some profit, or move your stop loss to break even at that point, so that we see how price is going to relate to the structure here, which is the demand, which is the buy zone we took advantage of a couple of days ago. So if price continues to form buying pressure around here, then we want to see this as another opportunity to join a rally to the upside. But if a breakdown of that level happens and then a retest of structure happens here, then selling pressure on that display will welcome addition to our existing trade on the XAU USD. So it is quite a simple setup we have here on the XAU USD. So I hope we will be on standby to take advantage of whatever opportunity comes if a breakdown of this bullish trend line happens during the New York session today. However, if the breakdown does not happen and price continue to rally to the upside, well, one thing I will say here is that we remain patient. Remember, we are still in this trade, and our stop loss is right around the $1,650 level. So if we see a situation where price breaks out of that bearish trend line we identified on the daily time frame, remember, we identified this bearish trend line on the daily time frame, which has been rejected by sellers in the last 24 hours. So if a breakout of that level happens, I want to be seeing it as a bullish signal. And then if a retest of that level happen, and you can see it lines up with the bullish trend line here, then we want to be looking for buying pressure around here to add more position to our buy position on the XAU USD. So this is how we want to trade the XAU USD going into the New York session today. If you have questions, feel free to drop in your inquiries in the comment section, and let's see how I can be of help in that regard. So that is that on the XAU USD.